The Royal Velavar training post was in a state of chaos since before the sun rose on this day. Naalin and Roevash were still in their private quarters, gearing up for their exploration into the caves that lie beyond the dragon. They dressed in dark clothes and stowed some of the wizard's salves and runes in their belts. They would be traveling light, so there was no room for niceties. Naalin shoved some face paint into her pack for herself and tied her hair into a knot at the nape of her neck. "Ready?" Roe kissed her, as she nodded yes in reply. "If there are more dragons in the caves below, we may be running out of that place fast," Roevash told the men as they made their way across the courtyard. "We must be ready for anything." He used his commander voice so everyone within earshot could hear him. "Yes, sir," echoed back through the jumble of men as supplies were loaded onto the wagons. His captains had managed to bring these young recruits to a higher degree of discipline, but Roevash worried he might be asking too much of them in the face of a possible dragon attack. "I believe in the light-footedness of the Edeleth, even if she is being followed by an enormous oaf such as you." Dakein grinned at Naalin as he walked up and poked fun at the commander. All teasing aside, he clasped Roevash in a ranger's traditional farewell. "I have faith in her as well," Roevash grinned back at him. "Be safe, my friend," Dakein added. "I will watch over the home front while you go out and have all the fun." "Somebody has to be in charge, Dakein, and you are the better man." Roevash tried to razz him back, but it felt more like mushy sentiment when he said it. He was about to savagely punch Dakein in the arm when their sparring was interrupted by Fionna. "Are we giving up on finding any more Edeleth in the territories?" Fionna asked loudly as she walked over to where the two were goofing off. Her eyes screamed, "Little boy," at Roevash, while her mouth silently waited for his reply. "I agree that we should still search." Roevash quit bouncing under her glare and went back to being serious. "The question is, where do we look from here?" Roe said, as Naalin handed him his sword. He inspected his father's newly cleaned and sharpened blade and busied himself strapping it onto his shoulder harness next to his daggers. "I think maybe we should look to the northwest around the Northshire folk, past the town of Breenway. They might know something," Fionna tried to convince him. After a short pause, Roe answered as he buckled his weapon harness on. "Yes, that is a good idea, Fionna. Pray this assignment goes well, and we have only one dragon to contend with. Your suggestions are duly noted." Fionna looked relieved that the commander was not going to ignore her this time. She half smiled at Roevash. "Be careful. We want you both back here in one piece," Fionna said with concern as she hugged them both goodbye. Egelum had made his way across the courtyard to Fiona's side. His frowning face was evidence that he was still not happy about being left behind. "Better yet," Roe turned to Fionna with a new thought. "Send out runners to see what they can bring back. Tell them to keep an ear out for any word of dragons or this strange religious cult we heard about, just in case." Yes, Fionna was excited by his suggestion. "Now we can get something started." She trilled as she bounced off the front of him with a quick kiss and hug. "Now you can be in many places at once," Roe winked. "See how you have your hands full here," Roevash lightly punched his little brother in the arm. EJ smiled sheepishly. "I am sorry for the depths of my anger, Ninhan." He spoke to Roevash for the first time in several days. EJ gave himself over to one of Roe's massive bear hugs. "There is my brother's face," Roevash happily growled, dropping EJ back onto his own 2 feet. "My heart could not stand parting with such disagreement between us." "Neither would mine." EJ looked like he was on the verge of tears. "Who else could watch over our Fionna?" Roe whispered. You know the trouble she can get into, he said louder, knowing she was listening in on their conversation. I am right here, Fionna teasingly scowled. Their silly antics made EJ smile and laugh a little. Roevash winked at Fionna as he mounted his horse. Circling once to gain control of the reins, Roe saluted to Dakein, and then turned galloping through the gate to catch up to Naalin, who rode at the front of the cavalcade. Roevash is so happy, so much more relaxed since he's been with Naalin, Fionna thought to herself as she shaded her eyes from the sun's glare. He calls my sister Little Bee. How sweet they have become, Fionna said out loud, feeling EJ's hand come to rest on her shoulder. The wagons creaked and groaned as men helped push-start them for the horses. They were heavily laden with the supplies needed to build a base camp. This meant their kin would be gone a long time before they would return. Welcome to the conclusion episode of Season 2, Tales of Eldelórne, Book 1. My name is Karleigh, and I'm reading for you Chapter 32, Here and Now. The onyx dragon's scales shimmered like precious stone as it lay near the opening of the dark cave entrance. It perched unshackled and seemed to be in a state of hibernation for some unknown reason. This does not seem right, Roe whispered. Dragons need to eat and hunt. There is no sign of normal dragon behavior. Something or someone has to be controlling it. Roevash had to disagree with Dakein's observation on that point. The monster has flown down in from somewhere and just stopped. Naalin whispered back in agreement. I myself have patrolled this area of the valley many times and do not remember ever seeing this cave entrance here before. Roevash felt his skin crawl as he said it. He inspected the strangely carved look of the walls. Do you think the beast dug this? Naalin asked as they crept past the drake. The tunnel ran mostly straight west and was smooth and arched as if hewn from the rock by some unknown magic or tool. Roe extended his hand up and could touch the height of the center of the arch. I would think it would take many seasons for mere humans to dig something like this, Naalin whispered. Not so long for goblins, but they tend to use tunnels they find, not dig new ones, Roe said as they moved further into the darkness. I am afraid to move quickly lest we meet with a trap or drop off a cliff in this lack of light, Roe cautioned. They moved closer to the right side of the cavern to walk. Will we never find an end? Naalin complained as she looked behind them. The faint light of the entrance had long disappeared from sight. Did you notice? Roe asked. There is no life. Yes, Naalin answered quietly. There were no bats, no rats, no moss. Not even mold or roots anywhere. Roe started to feel the hair on his neck rise in battle readiness, but he did not know what he sensed in the darkness. As the path never changed, they felt more confident and picked up the pace. What Roe and Naalin did not notice is the incline of the trail was dropping gradually into the lower depths of the mountain. How many leagues? Roe asked as he stopped to check the map. We've gone at least 5 and curved very slightly to the right, Naalin said. Roe unfolded a small parchment. That puts us in the center of the mountain range. Naalin felt uneasy as she tried not to think of a whole mountain piled above their heads. According to this map, we are moving towards the location that would be near Etten Fields. We are under the mountain where the ancient goblin rulers once lived. Roe pointed it out to Naalin. There must be another way in from the other side, he surmised. Maybe the goblins have come back, Naalin said. They both cringed at the thought. We will soon find out, Roe replied, as they pressed onward. Being Edeleth, Roe and Naalin could see fairly well in the dark, which gave them an advantage over mortal men, but it had its limitations. We are going to have to rest, Naalin, Roevash finally said after another hour of trudging down the empty dark corridor. I grow heartsick in this oppressive darkness, he confessed. Naalin reached for his hand and squeezed it. I feel the same heaviness in the air, she said, as they both leaned on the wall and slid down to a sitting position. Roevash dug in his pack, searching for his light. He had a starlight that was magically captured in a tiny jewel-like bottle. It was given to him as a youth from King Elendil himself. He didn't like to use it very often for fear it might wear out. Right now they needed it so badly. Ah, here it is, Roe showed Naalin the finial in his hand. With one touch, the light flared into the familiar bluish glow that he had always known. Roevash had tied a lanyard to the light long ago, so you could hang it from a belt or around a neck. It is good to see your face in the light again. Roe already felt the tension ease as he looked into Naalin's shining eyes. After knotting the leather cords together, he reached over and draped the finial around Naalin's neck. It rested comfortably at her bosom. The light did not react to her touch as she picked it up in her hand. It is a bit of magic, Rose snorted quietly. The only real magic I know. It is beautiful, Naalin smiled as she peered into it. They shared a meal that Fionna had packed for them of whey bread, fruit, and tea. After they finished eating, Naalin and Roe checked their packs and the dirt floor around them to make sure all their things were still together, just in case they had to move out fast. These make us invisible to enemy eyes. Roe set Fargel's wizard runes around them in a half circle on the floor. I would not have believed it had I not tested it myself. Wizard magic always holds a fascination for me, Roe mumbled from fatigue. Roevash rubbed his neck, still feeling the tingle of battle alert. I feel something too, Naalin said, seeing him fidget. It is as if we're being watched. Keep the light for us. When you gaze upon it, be assured that no matter where I am, I love you. Roevash kissed her solemnly as he gave Naalin his first and most precious possession. With a touch of his finger, Roe turned the starlight off, and they were swallowed up into the oppressive darkness again. You are the only light I need, Roe whispered to Naalin as he closed his eyes to sleep. Naalin carefully placed the finial inside her belt pack. Even though it did not react to her touch, she did not want it to light up at some inopportune moment. She crawled up the front of Roevash and lay her head gently on his chest. I always feel safe with you. She smiled at the comfort she felt there. She was soon engulfed in his warmth as he wrapped his arms around her. The steady thump of his heart in her ear lulled her senses to sleep. The air grew hot with the smell of iron, blood, and sweat as Roe and Naalin slept. The sound of clanking chains as prisoners stumbled along the path woke Roe first. Humans dragged heavy shackles around their ankles. Chains ran up the front of each one, fastening around necks and wrists. Roevash clutched Naalin tighter to himself. Feeling his tension, she woke, letting out a small gasp of surprise. They sat in silence as the line of humans moved past. A rune went flying as a shuffling foot kicked it. The stone clanked further down the tunnel. One of the guards heard the clatter and swung his torch around, searching, but saw nothing, so they just kept going without any more hesitation. the magic held. Roevash and Naalin remained unseen in the darkness. They could only watch and wait until the procession passed down the tunnel far enough not to hear them. "Did you see the guard? They are goblin, tall half-breed. This means the monsters are making offspring." Naalin scowled in alarm. "We cannot be too far from something now," Roe whispered. "We must follow." Picking their way along the wall, Naalin found the last rune and stuck it in her pack with the rest. They both kept their blade hands ready as they moved forward, following the macabre parade into the darkness. Soon they came to an opening of an expansive cavern. It was so large it made Elendil's palace seem insignificant in comparison. A fortification of new construction wrapped across the far end of the place. "I think we must go through there," Roe said, looking critically at the fortress. "This is the ruins of the ancient Goblin King," Naalin whispered. Her eyes methodically checked every edge and crevice for signs of enemies. "Then we have just come through the whole mountain underground," Roe answered her, clarifying what they already knew was correct. Dimly lit oil fires dotted trailing pathways far below in the vast chamber. In the darkness, the place seemed devoid of life at first glance. Naalin tied off one of their longest ropes so they could descend into the place while avoiding the main road. Soon the familiar smell of feces and filth rose up, stinging their eyes as they slowly repelled their way down a sheer rock face to a large overhang where they could rest. Directly below them, Naalin and Roevash could hear sounds of human voices pleading for mercy where there was none. "They are taking female human captives." Roe's eyes narrowed, horrified at the thought of such suffering. "They are birthing the Heisi again," Naalin frowned. "There has to be a leader behind all this," Roe added, thinking to himself whomever it was would be the first to meet with his blade when he found him. "We must get across to find a way out. I am sure now it opens into Etten Fields or somewhere near there." Roe silently nodded as his eyes pointed across the cavern towards the other side. Naalin narrowed her eyes and nodded in understanding. They both turned to pick their way across the rocky terrain, moving quickly toward the fortress that dominated the western end of the ancient Goblin Kingdom. The kingdom of Angeli faces mortal danger as an old enemy rises from the depths of a mountain. Goblins multiplying, Heisi being created. Soon the industry of forging and crafting will fill the great caverns of the ancient Goblin Kings. I think Roevash was correct in assuming there has to be a leader. Whomever they are, they must be pretty powerful to have built that fortress across the cavern. Roevash and Naalin have completed their mission. They have discovered some ilk in the lower depths of the mountain. Now the question is, can they find their way out of there? Tales of Eldelórne is now moving into its fall break, while I'm diligently working on Season 3, just for you. It's a good time to do some binge listening and get your friends involved. Next week, I will be releasing the second mixtape. It's the Season 2 featured music from Tales of Eldelórne. It's about an hour long, and I hope you enjoy it. On your commute to wherever you go, or through earbuds directly into your brain. Well, however you listen to your podcasts, you can find Tales of Eldelórne on just about everything all across the planet. I think I have some episodes in the bag, just for your entertainment while we're on break. No spoilers here. Yeah. And if you missed me, you can always find me at karleighbond.com or neck deep in dragon death and all kinds of stuff on Elder Scrolls Online with my peeps at Lore Seekers, and you know who you are. Love you guys. And see you next time. This is Karleigh Bonds signing off. Elvish Lesson of the Day. Tolkien's world names at least 15 different types of elvenkin in his writings. The Telerin or Telerin Elves are the singers. They sing the news across the physical and spirit realms for all to hear. Is the sound of their song always compelling, you might ask? Sometimes, yes. I suppose it depends on the urgency of the message. Like if it's the death of a sovereign versus an announcement of an upcoming celebration. The Telerin Elves named themselves Glynel. A group of singers is called Glendrim, and all the singers are Glyneth. So now you know when Roevash is talking about the Glyneth song, he's talking about all those elves. Hey, you could think of them as elvish version of social media. Oh, okay, no Twitter jokes.